Hi guys, for today I will be discussing about the division Chlorophyta. So this is on Module 3, Chapter 6 of Marine Botany. Yay! So as we go along this discussion, we will know more about this division. So watch out for more. Green algae constitute the most heterogeneous group of photoautotrophs inhabiting the biosphere and show an enormously wide variety of shape, size, and habits. As primary producers, green algae have an importance on our planet comparable to that of rainforests. From a taxonomic point of view, they constitute a paraphyletic group as they are likely to have a common ancestor with plants. They have the same type of pigments and produce the same kind of carbohydrates during photosynthesis as do land plants. The ability of single species in exploiting resources may be strongly different as concerning nutrient uptake, light harvesting, and resistance to flushing. The different combinations of these parameters, which in inland water ecosystems may strongly fluctuate in short time scales, give rise to a variety of assemblages that may show an amazingly high biological diversity. Their ubiquity makes rather difficult to summarize their ecology in a few words, since these organisms are archetypical of the incredibly vast possibility of adaptation shown by life on our planet. So for today, we will be discussing the etymology of Chlorophyta, its general characteristics, its classification, the classes under this division, evolution and phylogeny, habitat and distribution, invasive species, and its biological importance. So the etymology of the word Chlorophyta comes from the ancient Greek words chloros, which means green, and phyta, which means plant. The general characteristics of green algae or chlorophyta, they may be unicellular or one-celled, multicellular or many cells, colonial or living as a loose aggregation of cells, or coonocytic, or composed of one large cell without cross walls. The cell may be uninucleate or multinucleate. Most chlorophytes are autotrophs, but heterotrophic species are also known, such as Polytoma and Prototheca. They are widely known as green algae, and they consist of chlorophyll A and B, which are the pigments that give them color. During photosynthesis, they use starch as their carbohydrate reserve, and their cell wall is comprised of cellulose. Reproduction may be sexual or asexual. Sexual reproduction in chlorophytes often involves the exchange of nuclei via the conjugation tubes. Sexual reproduction involving two identical gametes is called isogamy. Oogamy, on the contrary, involves two non-identical gametes. One is small and motile, whereas the other is large and non-motile. Anisogamy refers to both motile and different sizes. Usually, the female is bigger. Many green algae have an alteration of haploid and diploid phases. The haploid phases from gametogenia, or sexual reproductive organs, and the diploid phases from zoospores by reduction division, or meiosis. Some do not have an alteration of generations, meiosis occurring in the zygote. And asexual reproduction It is done by fission, budding, fragmentation, and zoospores. Chlorophytes also consist of beta-carotene and xanthophylls. However, they are albeit few. They also have an apical flagella used for movement or locomotion. So now we are in the classification. So Chlorophyta is a taxonomic group that initially belongs to the domain Eukarya under kingdom Plantae and under a highly paraphyletic group named Viridiplantae. In this regard, it may refer to a division within the kingdom Plantae comprised of all green algal species. Later, though, the green algae were split into two phyla, Chlorophyta and Charophyta. Chlorophyta or marine green algae species are called chlorophytes. On the other hand, Charophyta or freshwater algae species are called charophytes. The taxonomies classify those green algal species living predominantly in marine water as chlorophytes, whereas those green algal species thriving mainly in freshwater are classified as charophytes. Nevertheless, the habitat of the chlorophytes is wide-ranging. Apart from marine water, they may also be found in fresh water. Others may live as well on land, such as this species called Trentepolyalis. Some chlorophytes have become adapted into thriving in extreme habitats, such as deserts, hypersaline environments, and Arctic regions. Both the chlorophytes and charophytes are green algae. Their predominant pigments are chlorophylls A and B. They store their carbohydrate reserves as starch. Their cell wall is chiefly comprised of cellulose. The charophytes, though, are the algal group presumed to have given rise to the embryophytes. They are more closely related and share common features that the chlorophytes lack. For instance, the charophytes and the embryophytes have enzymes such as class 1 aldolase, copper zinc superoxide dismutase, glycolate oxidase, and flagellar peroxidase that are absent in chlorophytes. Also, the charophytes use phragmoplasts during cell division. In the first taxonomic classification, there are 7,000 known species of green algae. On the second taxonomic classification, only about 4,300 species were classified. It is because the charophytes were separated. According to Hoek, Mann, and Jan's system, an older taxonomic classification of algae, Chlorophyta is a division of kingdom Plantae that included all green algae grouped into classes. These are Prasinophyceae, Chlorophyceae, Ulvophyceae, Cladophorophyceae, Bryopsidophyceae, Dacylcladophyceae, Trentepolophyceae, Pleurastrophyceae, Dobsormidiophysceae, Zygnematophyceae, and Charophyceae. However, on the newer classification, according to Lilliard et al.'s system on 2012, these are the classes and the orders under these classes. The class Olvophyceae and the orders Cladophoralis, Dacylcladalis, Bryopsidalis, Trenterpolyalis, Ulvavus olotricalis, Altmansiolopsidalis, and the class Chlorophyceae and the orders Odogonialis, Chaetophoralis, Chaetopeltidialis, Chlamydomonadalis, Spherophlialis. The class Trioboxyphyceae and the orders Chlorelalis, Ocystaceae, Microthamnialis, Triboxylialis, Prasiolaclade, And the other classes are Chlorodendrophyceae, Chlorophyta classes Incertacides, Chlorophycophyceae, Mammalophysceae, Nephrophyceae, Palmophilophyceae, Pedinophyceae, Picocystophyceae, Pyramimonadophyceae. Are you still there? So now, we're gonna talk about evolution and phylogeny. So how these species came about. According to the endosymbiotic theory, the early chlorophytes might have come from the early eukaryotes that engulfed photosynthetic prokaryotes. Through time, the prokaryote became incorporated inside the eukaryote that it eventually became an organelle, which is now is referred to as plastid. This event is presumed as well to have led to the rise of other clades of autotrophs, for example, the red algae and the glaucophytes. The chlorophytes eventually came about and in turn evolved. So it gave rise to the most of the green algal species known today. So did you know that some members of Chlorophyta are invasive species, like the Cladophora glomerata, which bloomed in Lake Erie in the 1960s because of phosphate pollution? The rotting algae washed up on beaches and produced an odor so foul that it discouraged the public from enjoying the lakes. It became so offensive in sight and smell that it was confused for raw sewage. Two other species, the codium or deadman's fingers and Caulerpa, threaten native plant life in coastal California, Australia, the Atlantic coast, and the Mediterranean Sea. One invasive species, called Caulerpa taxifolia, has been introduced into non-native environments because of its popularity in aquariums. Here, we're gonna know what's the biological importance of green algae. Like other algae, green algae serve as an important food source for herbivorous marine life, such as fish, crustaceans, and gastropods, and even sea snails. Humans also use green algae as food. It has been part of the Japanese cuisine for a long, long time. There are more than 30 edible species of seaweed, which is naturally rich in minerals, such as calcium, copper, iodine, iron, magnesium, manganese, molybdenum, phosphorus, potassium, selenium, vanadium, and zinc. Edible types of green algae include sea lettuce or Ulva lactuca and sea grapes or Caulerpa lentifera. The pigment beta-carotene found in green algae is used as food coloring, and carotene also has been shown to be very effective in preventing some cancers, including lung cancer. So in 2009 of January, researchers announced that green algae could play a role in reducing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. As sea ice melts, iron is introduced to the ocean. This fuels the growth of algae, which can absorb carbon dioxide and trap it near the ocean floor. With more glaciers melting, this could reduce the effects of global warming. Other factors, however, can reduce this benefit. If the algae are eaten, the carbon can be released back into the environment. So, one fact, guys. So, did you know that algae make almost as much oxygen as trees, but nobody shows some love to them? So, they're crying. So, can you imagine the sad algae noises? So, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy this discussion. So, here are the references that you can check online. Enjoy studying. Thank you, salamat. Ariga, thank you, salamat. This is Aman, and this is our discussion for today.